Okay, so everybody, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is kind of a special episode, I would say. I've got Joey and Sam here. I won't do. I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Joey, if you want to introduce yourself, brief who you are, whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Joey. Longtime friend of Rudy's. I'm a member of Gays Against Groomers here on the West Coast in California, and actually looking really forward to having this conversation. It's the first time going to be able to sit and talk about subjects that are extremely important to us, to our organization, and to our mission.
And I'm Samuel Garcias.
Right.
I'm also part of the West Coast region for GaG. I'm actually the region lead, and Joey is my what is your title now, Joey?
I don't know actually anymore since I am going to be out soon, but
Yeah, Joey's leaving us to go to law school. So yeah, we're out here in Cali representing GaG.
Awesome. So, what we're going to do on this episode, those who are watching live and those who listen later, is we're going to be discussing the Skrmetti case. And God, I hope I'm saying that right. Probably should have cleared that with you guys before we went going. So, just a brief introduction to what Skrmetti is. So, Tennessee enacted a law that put a prohibition on medical procedures performed on minors related to sexual identity. Senate Bill 1, also known as SB 1, prohibits healthcare providers from prescribing, administering, or dispensing puberty blockers or hormones to any minor for the purpose of 1, enabling the minor to identify with or live as a purported identity inconsistent with the minor's biological sex, or 2, treated purported discomfort or distress from a discordance between the minor's biological sex and asserted identity. At the same time, SB1 permits a healthcare provider to administer puberty blockers or hormones to treat a minor's congenital defect, precocious puberty, disease, or physical injury. So, then the United States government, if I'm not wrong, sued the state of Tennessee, and Skrmetti is their attorney general. Do I have that right so far?
First it was the three, I believe, three uh, quote unquote transgender minors and their parents and a doctor in the state of Tennessee who filed suit, and the Biden administration invoked a kind of arcane law that allows the administration to essentially take over the case or intervene in certain cases that raise 14th Amendment due process issues. So that's how the Biden administration got involved.
Okay, so the feds got involved because they saw it as a violation of the 14th Amendment under Equal Protection Clause. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that came up a lot in the little bit that I did study on this. Was the Equal Protection Clause was violated. Long story short, on the case, it was ruled 6-3 in favor of Skrmetti. So Tennessee's law is upheld, and the Biden administration lost, or what's left, or the DOJ, I guess, lost in this scenario, which is, I think, is a good thing. So, where exactly did I want to start? So, let's try to stay somewhat out of the current political, like presidential state of things. Other than the one thing that was curious to me is why didn't the Trump administration drop this? Was it just too far in?
Yeah, so that's part of it. The case was actually argued after the election in front of the Supreme Court. So at that point, the President Trump had already been elected. But again, the arguments are scheduled. It's going forward. At that point, the justices had heard it. It was on the docket. So what the Trump DOJ ended up doing was saying that it is no longer the position of the Department of Justice that there was an equal protection violation. But the case was already, I mean, at that point, it was already, a decision was going to come whether or not the Trump administration was going to continue as a party to the case, if that makes sense.
Right. It basically had already happened. We were just waiting on waiting on someone to tell us what happened, what they
Exactly.
thought.
Yeah, just like we figured that it was going to go this way because of the sovereignty of the states. That's where, part of where the Supreme Court ruled is that, this is with them. And
It goes down to the review that the court wanted to use. So I guess getting into a little bit of that equal protection question, the district court had actually found that there was an equal protection violation and that transgender status should be protected under a more, let's call it an involved level of judicial scrutiny, heightened scrutiny. So essentially they were saying that being transgender met certain criteria, being politically powerless, a history of discrimination, so on and so forth. So the district court found that was correct. Once it went to the appellate court, the appellate court said no, that's not the case. Not only is transgender status not transgender status is not it isn't part of our heightened scrutiny. We're not going to apply this extra level to test the law. And so when they do that, they decide that they're going to go to what's called rational basis. So kind of what Samuel was just saying.
And that's like the most lenient review of it.
So rational basis is very lenient. It's very deferential to the state. Effectively, the state only has to prove at this point that it has a rational basis in protecting minors. And in this case, and Chief Justice Roberts, to his credit, at the beginning of his opinion, goes through how there's not really as much of a consensus for these type of procedures being performed on minors as some might want to argue. He raises the issue that even WPATH, up until this medical organization for transgender care, didn't allow any of this for minors as recently as 1998. And then, of course, something shifts. And now we're seeing it as an explosion. And you have even Europe, in the UK, they published the cash report that shows, look, we need to put the brakes on this. We don't know what's going on. These drugs are dangerous. And so the Supreme Court agrees, and the appellate court agreed, the circuit court agreed, that the state has a fundamental interest to say, no, stop. We don't know what's going on here. And we need to put an end to this within the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, and part of what was highlighted in that too is just the work that we've been doing with GaG and the message and the facts that we've been trying to spread, or we have been spreading for a few years now, is that there is no consensus with this whole trans ideology. We're being told, at the front lines that this is science. All the medical doctors are behind this, and then that's just not the case. There's no consensus. And this had also to have that highlighted, as part of this was really big. I mean, that's a microphone that is heard, everywhere. So it was really, really nice to hear that being said at that level.
To that point, if you don't mind, Sam, if you want to speak to what Gays Against Groomers, like what it is that you guys do. I don't.
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit, and
became very popular, and then.
Yeah, we're an organization made up of gay, lesbian, bisexual individuals fighting from the inside of our community to take back what belonged to us originally, fighting back the indoctrination, the sexualization, the mutilation, the medicalization of children under the guise of the LGBTQIA+, and so it goes on. We're just normal gay people. We're the people that your listeners are friends with, their relatives. What happened was this radical group came in, this ideology just soaked into our community and hijacked it. And our founder Jamie was just like, hey, this is enough. And this is not, you're not going to take our community. And we all just went in and we went from there. But primarily, obviously, first and foremost, to safeguard children. Second, educate, support parents where we can. And that's a big part of our mission as well. And then finally, to reclaim our community. I mean, gays, this trans ideology is, they're erasing what will be gay men and lesbian women, and also obviously affecting the bisexual community. They're taking them away. These are young boys who are little effeminate. They like, you know, girl clothes or maybe Barbies, and there's this sinister intervention that's happening, and they're saying, hey, you know, little Sammy, you know, you like dolls, or you kind of really like girls' clothes. You know what? You're probably a girl and you're born in the wrong body, and all those things that you want a boyfriend to be normal, you can have all of that if we just transition you. And knowing what it was like growing up gay, it wasn't easy, but you know, nobody gets out of puberty unscathed. It was hard, but life can be hard. But had somebody came to me and told me that and said all my problems would go away, I would have took it hook, line, and sinker. I would have abandoned my parents. I would have written anything, said anything to any court to have what you wanted. And that was just to be normal, you know, and to be able to have a boyfriend. So, sorry, a little long-winded there, but that's basically, yeah, who we are. We are gays and lesbians fighting from the inside against, you know, this indoctrination, because we know what the outcome is. And luckily for us, because of our messaging, others are starting to see what the outcome is. And so we're getting great support, have been getting great support.
And to Sam's point,
So
you know, a lot of this
it's
stuff,
almost safe to say that. Go ahead, Joey.
Sorry, Rudy, go ahead. Oh, and to Sam's and a little bit to Sam's point, a lot of this stuff is happening behind the backs of parents. We do have you do have parents like the ones that obviously sued in the Skrmetti case that are going to go along with it. But you also have some parents who are sort of gaslit into it. I mean, we've probably all of us have heard that question. Would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter? I mean, come on now. Like, what more could you possibly say to a parent than your child's going to kill themselves if you're resistant to us giving them an experimental procedure? Like, well, obviously the parent's going to want their child to live. And
Sure.
Justice Roberts also kind of addresses that a little bit, not as much, but he makes the point that, you know, and we've realized in some of the studies that we have on our website that there's no proof that gender affirming care actually deals with that kind of ideation, that deals with the mental health struggles. In fact, there's more evidence to suggest that it doesn't, and it makes it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially coming out of Europe, what we've seen, and that's, you know, starting to make its way here, that it's actually the opposite is true, is that we're seeing more detransitioning happening. The medical fallout of what's happening of these kids being on puberty blockers is now starting to be somewhat tracked. And everybody's like, holy shit, this is horrific. This is not what we've been told. And yeah, it's really scary stuff.
Yeah, it really seems to me that like the Gays Against Groomers early on and has continued as far as I can tell, you're really the group protecting gay people, and not at the expense of some experimental thing or just not at the expense of carving up kids, to paraphrase Jordan Peterson, which is, you know, there's always time down the road if someone really is in the wrong body or they feel like they are. One of the things that really sticks out to me in this whole deal is why is there this rush to grab a, you know, historically Joe Biden mentioned something about an 8-year-old, you know, just transitioning in an 8-year-old. It's like that is the most insane thing I've ever heard. One of the most insane things I've ever heard, that an 8-year-old, they don't even know what the hell they want to eat, but all of a sudden they know that they're in the wrong body. That is the most insane thing that you could ever say out loud. And then people went along with it. And I think a lot of people went along with it out of fear, but mostly out of just pure ignorance. You know, Joey, you mentioned, well, both of you mentioned the studies that not transitioning, you know, a child that basically is going to make them commit suicide, which is just completely insane and counterintuitive. And now there's actual science and data that's proving that. But if you look at some of those early studies, and that was one of the things that I looked at 2-3 years ago, of some study that came out, and their control group was non-transitioned transgender people versus transition transgender people. It's like, well, that's not a control group.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it
might be one of the same studies that most of those boys ended up turning out just to be gay at the end of that one study, if it's the same one. You know, so we're not even following these all the way through. And to the question or the comment of why all of a sudden, why so quickly, that's the only way it works. You can, if you can get these parents to make uninformed consent, because that's what it is. It's not informed consent. You can't really be informed of what's going to happen to your child and how you're possibly going to put them truly in a state of wanting to, end their life because of how horrific things have gone and they can't go backwards. It's a terrible, depressing, awful place to be. There's no repairing this. So you have to not only expedite the parents through that, so you get them on board so that they're not fully informed, because otherwise most parents, would be like, no, absolutely not. And also the child's age is important as well, because the earlier you start the puberty blocker, the better effects it has, but not to transition them. And so that all works, but so that you can get them on it to the point where their body has been conditioned enough to where it needs to continue it, or they just stay on it themselves as they're going to transition later. And you have a medical patient for life. And if you don't hook them in their pre-adolescence, early years, it's much harder later on. So that's where the push came through, was certainly motivated by money. And then of course, just the indoctrination. These kids don't belong to you. They belong to us, the government. And if we can make them not even aware of who they are or what they stand for, then they're nobody and they stand for nothing and we control them. So there's definitely that philosophy. But the most important ones are the parents not being informed, so they can't give true consent, but they're giving consent thinking they're informed, and then also getting that patient early, because then you have a patient for life, and you're talking millions and millions of dollars for one patient.
And a little bit of what we're seeing in California too. To the state of Tennessee had the wherewithal to stand up and say, we're not going to allow this in our state. Here in California, we're actually, if you can believe it, a sanctuary state for minor gender transition.
Right.
There's been legislation that's been gone through by a name that probably everybody who's listening would recognize. It's Scott Wiener.
So accurately named, by the way.
It's so creepy. It's like, dude, this is so cringe.
It's like right out of Central. It's right out of Central Casting.
You wouldn't believe it if Hollywood wrote that, though.
Yes.
No, you wouldn't. But the things that he's put forward and the things that we've dealt with, we've campaigned against some legislation called AB 1955. Which kind of ties in here as well, because if a kid is identifying as transgender at school, the school is now actually prohibited from saying anything to the parents. So kid can, you can have a little boy who goes to school wearing a polo and pants, and then they'll help him change into a dress and a skirt while he's at school, and then change out before he goes home.
And then these bills, they build on each other. So before AB 1955, it was SB 695, I believe, where what Joe was saying, it provided a sanctuary state. So if a child runs away from home and saying that my parents don't affirm me, they consider that under the umbrella of abuse or neglect. So they can take that child, put them in a group home, again, more money, put them in a group home. They don't have any obligation to tell the parent where they are. And after they see a physician and a psychiatrist, they could potentially even be put on puberty blockers before the parents even know where they are. And then the other prong to that is that it allows children to come out of state. So Tennessee's boss, they have everything locked down. They're protecting their children as they should be, and acknowledging and uplifting parent rights. Well, the kid leaves and makes it to California, and we put them, right. California puts them in a group home. They're being cared for and looked after. We're not cared for. They're being looked after. You can't take them back home. You can't come to the state and say, well, I want my kid. First of all, you probably won't know where they are. Two, you're going to have a legal battle. It's terrifying stuff. And that's one of those things where people too are like, what happens in California? It's all the way over there. There's a bunch of libs. It's going to break off and float, sink into the ocean anyway. Maybe. But what's so important is that what we do here is a blueprint for the rest of the nation. We've seen that happen with Colorado. Maine and Maine have been on fire. And some of those blueprints laws were from California, but also what we have here allows kids to come from other states and benefit from this.
So let's bring that back then to the case itself. So we now have a precedent. It is not necessarily a federal precedent as far as sweeping across the nation, but if you're in the state of Tennessee, you went out on this limb, you signed this legislation, got it passed, went through the proper procedures, then got challenged in court, and now you have won. So do we see this? And by the way, I think we have to give a little shout out to at least Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire for kind of championing this cause in Tennessee and putting a kind of a bigger name behind it. But also, does this do we see a cascading effect? You know, you just mentioned from California to Colorado to Maine. Well, now do we see Tennessee to, you know, everywhere else? I mean, does this give legal precedent to, obviously it will back up a law that's similar, but does this give a legal precedent to say maybe the FBI, U.S. Marshals to go into California on behalf of a family, say in Tennessee?
So the court decision doesn't go that far. What it does do, though, is now every state has cover to pass a law that looks like Tennessee's. And Tennessee's is phrased very carefully, and this is kind of how the Supreme Court arrived at where they did. To get to rational basis, they had to first there were a couple of different arguments made by the Biden administration and by the plaintiffs in this case. Number one, one of the first arguments was that it amounted to sex discrimination. Well, the Supreme Court only rejected that argument because of a case a long time ago called Gedaldig v. Aiello. And in Gedaldig, there was a lot of time that was spent on this. Justice Alito went back and forth with the Biden administration on this exact subject. If you go listen to the oral arguments, they're about 2 hours, but it's kind of worth it if you're a giant legal nerd like me. And so in this case, it was a question of whether or not an insurance, California's disability insurance, amounted to sex discrimination because it excluded pregnant women. Well, it didn't, because you had basically two classes that were created. It was pregnant women and everyone who is not pregnant, which also includes women, because women can either be pregnant or not pregnant. So because women were present in both of those classes that were created by the legislation, it wasn't sex discrimination. It's the same thing here. Because you have minors who might be considered transgender of both sexes on both sides, or you have minors who maybe consider themselves transgender, you have minors who are obviously not transgender and not gender confused, then because boys and girls are present in both classes, it's not sex discrimination. Does that make sense before I get any further into that?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So the Supreme Court rejects this argument that there's sex discrimination. On the 14th Amendment question, the court is saying, well, we've already ruled in the past that based on age, there is this legitimate state interest in regulating based on age. In this case, it's minors. Minors can't consent. They can't make up their mind. They can't, they cannot consent to these procedures and understand that there are long-term consequences.
They can't sign a contract.
They cannot sign a contract. The second thing that was looked at is medical use. And this is where I thought it was really interesting when I was reading the case, and I even had to make sure that I was understanding it. There was a case out of New York, Vaco, that the Supreme Court, that Chief Justice Roberts cites in his opinion. And that actually had to do with physician-assisted suicide. So in this case, though, where that turns is the question of medical use. The Tennessee law does not actually ban puberty blockers. You can still get puberty blockers in the state of Tennessee if your child is going through precocious puberty. The same thing with hormones. A biological boy who is having some abnormal development can still get access to testosterone. A biological girl who is having some abnormal development can still get access to estrogen. And so the Supreme Court is saying, because it's zeroed in specifically on what the use of these treatments is, that there's no discrimination here. And in fact, even though I want to get the exact quote and I can't remember what it was, but Chief Justice Roberts states that all laws are going to create some kind of class and have some amount of discrimination in them. It's just a matter of if there is a constitutional interest to the creation of those classes. And I just thought that kind of was mind blowing to me, and I was kind of going back and forth with that in my head. But in this case, again,
right? Yeah, and there's purpose in those. There's if there's purpose,
legitimate medical purpose.
Yeah, exactly. There's purpose behind it. They're not saying that you can't have it because you're trans. It's you're a minor and there's no purpose for it. So somebody with precocious or ambiguous, genitals or something where they're needing, or they're low in testosterone or whatever the case may be, like Joey stated, that's fine. That there's a purpose there's a medical purpose. And that's where kind of, I don't even whether it's the left or whatever, but I think it's the radicals. It's not, this is more of what their agenda is when this stuff comes out, they skip all that really important language and they're like, look at, they're coming after the trans. And it's like, no, that's not what they're doing. They just said that this does not show purpose. And we're not taking away these things where they have medical use and where it's actually helpful. We're just saying that we're not just going to do it because you want to and you're trans and so you need this and you're under 18, like, okay, over 18, great, but that's not what's not what he was discussing.
So what the court did basically was give cover. These types of laws that are narrowly written are constitutional. This only really applies to Tennessee right now. There's a few other states that are moving toward these similar bans. Speaking for myself, in my own opinion, I'd like to see more federal regulation on this, especially where the FDA might be concerned. Start really tracking things like puberty blockers and where they're being prescribed and how they're being prescribed. Because again, you still have this case in California where somebody can run away to our state if they're a minor and still get these procedures administered.
One of the things that, before I move on too far, the term precocious puberty is a great band name, but also one of the things that's amazing to me is that I think you said earlier, Joey, that their case was based on like protecting minors and having a minor interest in things like that. Whereas what is California doing? Because that's not protecting a minor. Like the state has this mandate, kind of social contract type order, if you will, whether it's big state, little state, that they're there to protect the little guy. They're there to protect the vulnerable. They're there to enforce contracts and things like that. And they're basically just supposed to be a referee in which no harm is done. And if there is one side that feels harm, that they take it to the court. And again, the state gets involved. I don't understand how California is able to be a sanctuary state for butchery. And that's just how I've been referring to it. And I'm going to keep referring to it because that's really what it is. I mean, if a kid said, I have 2 functioning arms, and I know there is a phobia or a clinical diagnosis out there where someone feels the need they have to amputate their leg. Mm-hmm. Perfectly normal, working, healthy leg. And they're just like, I got to get rid of this leg. And that's in the medical literature as being some sort of problem with that person mentally having an issue. I don't understand necessarily why the state is. I mean, if Oklahoma said tomorrow, hey, if you feel like you need to cut your leg off, come to Oklahoma and we won't tell anybody. And, it's violating kind of the do no harm of doctors. We could wrap our heads around that for a consenting adult somewhat, but for a 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old, I think we all would be like, oh, no, you're not cutting your leg off today. We don't care if you make it there. That's not going to happen. So at a federal level, do you think with the puberty blockers, all of those things with RFK being there, do you think it gets a hard scrutinous look? Do you think there is a possibility that these things become heavily regulated / banned? I mean, like steroids are kind of the only analogous thing I can think of, that steroids do have a proper use case for children and adults. But I couldn't just go in there when I was 17. It's like, look, doc, I need steroids because I play football and I'm not big enough. So do you think like maybe they are regulated like that, or they're going to be heavily regulated, possibly even banned? Is that a possibility?
I think we have a better shot with this administration for sure. A lot of that is to be seen, but we have people that are speaking about it in an honest manner, from an honest position, from a true medical position. These things are being talked about now. So I think we have a better shot. I hope so, because, one of the things that Joey and I were talking about leading up to, to meeting with you, and that is just that one of the things that everybody thinks is like, oh, because Trump's in, whether you're for Trump or not, but you're for, protecting kids, that's, one of his things, that's his message, and parents' rights, the Constitution. Everybody's like, oh, it's all going to be okay. He's the boss. He's going to, get this all together. up until recently, nothing's been passed. So you can say all you want about how bad it is for guys to be in girl sports and in girl spaces and for kids. That's all just lip service. So until things start getting passed, we don't know. I like, again, I'm more hopeful because at least they're talking about it, but it really comes back to one of those things. If you're going to talk about it, be about it. Like, we need legislation here. That's the only thing that's going to stop this. And like you mentioned, putting bans on certain medical treatments or who gets access to them and when. Absolutely. So more hope for sure. I'll turn over to Joey, but yeah, we have more hope, but again, we have to see legislation come through.
And it really comes down to legislation, because the president, to his credit, he signed, his executive order, basically that will rescind some of this Biden administration year guidance on women's sports. That actually our founder and president got to be there in the White House when he signed that order, and he has spoken about these procedures being performed on minors. The problem is that anything that President Trump does unilaterally can go away if an unfriendly administration were to come in 2029, January 2029. We need legislation. I don't know if it stayed in, but the big beautiful bill was supposed to include provisions that were going to ban child mutilation here. And I don't know that they still made it in because of everything that happened in the Senate with the markup. But Congress has to take this up. Even an FDA rule can go the way of the dodo if there's another Health and Human Services secretary. RFK Jr., to his credit, too, has spoken about these issues. He's mentioned puberty blockers. I just don't know what exactly even the FDA can do, except to issue guidance, to issue rules. Congress has to act. And there has to be legislation that says nowhere in the United States are you going to be allowed to do this. And if you do it, there will be consequences. Tennessee, SB1 has, a few great consequences. There's civil fines. There's lawsuits. It created a private right of action. So it allows parents and children to sue if these procedures are performed. I would go even further and say there should be criminal penalties.
Yeah, I think that depending on how they write it, it is about the consequences and how severe they're going to be. Because, to your point earlier about, there's the Constitution, there's the 14th Amendment, where, parents have been granted to govern their children how they see fit. And yet we have bills like AB 1955, who, allows for children to come and tell their teacher or any of their faculty member. I mean, it could be the art teacher, nothing to do with counseling, just the art teacher knows, and they can keep that information from a parent. That's unconstitutional. Yet California passed AB 1955. So these people, they don't care. The Gavin Newsoms, they do not care. They think that they have, they're entitled to this, that this is what the people want, and that somehow they are above, the Constitution. I mean, it's crazy, but they do it. And so it shows you what they're capable of, what they will do. So that's why what Joey was saying too, the legislation and all that and consequences of it, how severe, how swift, that's all going to matter when these things start to roll out. And again, back to my hope, I have more hope with this administration because they do have a track record of following through and being, meaning business and standing on business. That's going to be the only way that states like California are able to continue to safeguard their children and hopefully not ruin, generations of children to this ideology.
I think one of the best things about it, and you guys are obviously, you're 100% correct. If we don't get it in legislation, you don't get it in writing, it doesn't really mean anything. But I would say probably the best news is I'm going to kind of defend Newsom here, which is an odd place to be. And Joey, don't make fun of me, but he has no beliefs. So he can be turned out on a whim because whatever is popular is what Newsom will do. And hating Trump, he still thinks is popular, but this has to be another one of those, they call it an 80-20 issue. I think this is more of a 95-5 or 99-1 issue when it comes to kids and, irreparable harm done to them. I mean, if we're just looking at like the ICE raids there in Los Angeles, I don't know what the feeling is there. Obviously, you guys will, but nationally, Trump's winning that issue. No one cares. Like Oklahoma is not the only one going, let them burn it down. Just make sure you get the illegals out too. So Newsom is losing. Bass is losing, at least on a national scale. I mean, they look horrible. So that's your one hope for Newsom of going, hey, maybe this ain't working out. And as you guys have probably noticed recently, he's kind of changed his tune on some things. So
yeah, he's beta energy for sure. Yeah,
he you know, he'll tell Charlie Kirk that it's fundamentally unfair for you know, biological boys to compete in girls sports, but then we just had a biological boy compete in track and field, you know, and
Right.
and unfortunately trounce all of the girls who had worked hard. Sam and I actually were there for one of these track meets. We didn't stay long enough to actually watch the event, but
we
we were
stayed
there
long enough to see all the hostility, man. They were coming for it.
we definitely did. There's a wonderful woman who's running for state superintendent here, Sony Shaw, who's been a longtime ally of ours, and she's been on the forefront of a lot of challenging Newsom up there in her school district. She's challenged AB 1955, and she said, we're not going to do this in this district.
Yeah,
And
she's gotten legally. She's made moves, and it's been in her benefit. Yeah, it's wild, but yeah, we're very familiar with that. A lot of people are on to this and have been. COVID kind of brought that up with a lot of stuff. So it's good to hear though that, you know, other states know that this guy's just a chameleon. He's beta energy, and he's gonna do whatever makes him sound cool in the moment, literally on a podcast, and turn around and do a very different thing. You know,
and the thing
he's
with
that
issues
snake
like
oil salesman, used car salesman energy.
100%.
100%. With issues like this too, you talk about it being an 80-20 issue, or maybe even, like you said, Rudy, a 95-5 issue. Once people find out how weak the science, the science, you know, we get back to that phrase, the science, really is surrounding this, and about some of the underlying mental health issues that accompany childhood gender dysphoria, they're not so on board all of a sudden with making permanent decisions for kids. But we have to strip that away, and we have to put those safeguards in place for places like California, where unfortunately anything could happen with our leadership. Newsom's out next year. Whoever ends up filling that gap in California, he's term limited. So we don't know where. I think we can probably all guess where we'll see Gavin Newsom in the future, but we don't need to get into that.
All hail Governor Karen Bass.
And that could be worse, especially for these issues. And what we have to get out there is that, especially for states who would be more friendly, you need to act now. The Supreme Court has told you that if you do this, you're good, you're golden. If you write laws that are similar to this one, you know, there is no sex discrimination. There, you know, transgender. There is no equal protection under. There's no equal protection violation. They tried to apply a completely different precedent too in Bostock, which was mind-bogglingly strange, because Bostock relied on Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which, you know, of course, being fired for being transgender is completely different from giving a child drugs and surgical procedures that they're going to have to live with their entire lives. So it's amazing, you know, Chief Justice Roberts really didn't even spend that much time on it, except to say, this argument is dumb. Like, why are we even going here with it?
Let me. That's a good point. A good time for me to play devil's advocate here, and I use that term almost literally. Well, if I'm on the side of the federal government in this case, the DOJ, I guess. What is the problem with these kids have been not adjudicated, but have been determined to by a mental health professional, let's say, these kids are trapped in the wrong body, and every day that they're trapped in the wrong body and they're not allowed to be their true self, you are causing harm to that child, not only mentally, but physically and that harm cannot ever be repaired either. So why not just allow them to pause their puberty, and if when they get to 17 or 18, they can just like turn it back on?
Because that's not, that sounds great, but that's not how it works. Puberty blockers transform. I mean, this is going through puberty. You're letting your brain develop, your genitals, your bone, all that stuff has to happen, right, in order for us to grow up. That's adolescence, your awkward stage. Everybody looks goofy, and you shoot up overnight. You're putting children on these puberty blockers. It's literally on a molecular level. It's preventing that. It's not only, so this is what I kind of have analogy is that what this does is it starves the body. It interrupts the pituitary gland and what it needs to send, all these things that are happening on a molecular level organically. You're growing. It pauses that. It disrupts it. And the consequences of it are underdeveloped brain, infertility, bone loss. So you can't say, okay, well, and I get what you're saying. This, and I love when this gets brought, just because it really gives us the opportunity to explain this, what people don't think about. It sounds like, oh, well, then why not just stop? Like, okay, I'm 19. I'm kind of not feeling it anymore. I'm just going to go back to being me. It doesn't happen, because everything has been interrupted. And so there is no going back. You can stop, but you're still going to have issues. And it's one of those things where it starves the body on a molecular level. So if we had a child who, was brought into a physician and they were completely malnourished, you could tell, like they were being starved, and
Right.
we would never stand for that. But because people can't see it right away, they don't understand the harm. But it's literally the same thing. You're starving this child of what they need to grow, both physically and mentally. And unlike food, if there's intervention, you can get that child to help remove them from that abusive, neglectful home. With puberty blockers, if once it goes too far, and it's not like, oh, it's years, it's 20, it's not good. No, it's very, very quickly. There is no, well, we can just give him the right or give her the right, and then it'll be okay. That there's no taking it back. There's no nourishing the body way you can a child who was being starved, or been neglected.
And if you go to everybody who's interested in some of these, some of the real studies behind this, and there's not a lot out there yet because there's not enough research on what this type of stuff does to minors, but what they're finding are things, brittle bones, hypogonadism, neurological issues. If you go to radar.gaysagainstgroomers.com, you can read about some of this stuff. All the medical studies are there for you.
Yeah.
And you can, and some of these neurological issues are crazy. And that's not to say that we don't have research on, could this lead to cancer, because we're messing with people's hormones.
Yeah, we don't know that yet,
so
but
some of those issues that are, the bottom line is what it comes down to is, what are the long-term consequences? Because anyone who tells you that they know the long-term consequences are lying to you.
They can't.
Right.
And what we do know long-term has come out of Europe, and it hasn't worked out. It's been very, and these people go through the puberty blockers and all the therapy, and they start to detransition because it didn't do anything. Because this is not really something that is where these kids are locked in this place and they're really a different sex. There's just so much more than that. And when you see numbers, and these studies I would actually say that on our radar, there is a lot of information, especially about the medical part of it. So, all of your listeners, go there. This stuff is there. It's legit. It's relevant. It's recent. These kids are transitioning. If they just are allowed to grow up organically, in the 80 percentile or more of once they get through it, they're like, yeah, I'm not really trans. It was awkward. I was confused. Life was weird. And so, but we're not letting them do that. We're again, there's this sinister intervention that's happened intentionally. It's calculated. And these kids are not being given the opportunity to grow up organically. So to the parent, or family member or friend who really feels that they truly have a trans individual in their life, I would say, why do they have to go through all that? If they really are that person, love them, support them the way that I was supported by the people who didn't care that I was gay. Nobody said I had to, well, a lot of people said I had to be this, that, or the other. The people who loved me didn't. They just let me be me. And I grew up organically, and it's not going to be easy, but life, I don't think, is meant to be easy. You know, how do you gain character and get perspective without some of the hard knocks? You know, I'm not saying that we should support, you know, somebody getting bullied or something, but life isn't easy. None of us got out of adolescence, you know, unscathed. So I would encourage these people who really feel that their child is, or their, you know, sibling or whatever, love them and let them grow, see what happens. And because they can have all the medical procedures later on. I mean, we see this with people who truly feel trans or are trans, identify as that as adults. They're having the facial surgery to feminize their face, implants, all the equipment down there. It can all be done. But what can't be undone is what we're doing to these children. And
Right.
Another point I'll end with this is we always hear the word medical castration. And I don't think some people don't really hang on that and what it means. That's what these puberty blockers are doing. Imagine, you know, a child saying that, and this is happening. So it's not even imagining. The reality is these children are being told, yes, you can transition these hormone blockers, puberty, but they don't do anything. You're fine. It's all going to be good. You're medically castrating them. How can a child say that, no, I'm good with this, I never want to have an orgasm? If you would have taken that away from me as a kid, I would be looking to knuckle up and call people to the mat if I couldn't do what I do with my, you know, in my bedroom. That is a very important human function, connection for people who want to reproduce. And you're telling me that a child can make the informed consent that they never want to have an orgasm. And then if you explain it to them, of course, you're going to be like, oh, gross, that's nasty. I would have done the same thing. But they don't know what that means. And for these doctors, these medical professionals to be willingly pushing these children to make that decision, to miss such an important, intimate connection in their adult life is absolutely criminal.
We have spoken with detransitioners who they will never have children because they were transitioned too young.
They'll never orgasm, to know what it's like to be with your partner that way. It's absolutely diabolical. And it's like you said, it's butchery. You're just doing it on a molecular level. It's crazy.
Well, as you know, there's three guys sitting here, so I think most of us probably take orgasms for granted, but I'm sure there's women out there that have still never had one. But that's a joke. One of the things that's
Nope.
one of the things that is really glaring to me about the whole trans identifying and trans movement is and I think we're finding it out now for real, for actual science, not just me looking at it and observing, but the rates of autism amongst these folks is staggering. Differing levels, you know, where you're at, where they're at on the spectrum is differing. But when you start to find that out and you start to understand, it becomes a little more horrific. So basically, you're taking someone who would be somewhat handicapped, I guess is the way to put it. Even though I think levels of autism are actually a human evolution to an extent, but when you find out that these people really can't speak for themselves and are being led down this path in which they're then, you know, all of these horrific things happen to them, it gets in the level, and I don't ever use this term lightly, and I hate the fact that it's become a kind of desensitized term or label, but it becomes that level of Nazism that we were all horrified by when we learned in school of the human experiments in the things done to people. You know, Joseph Mengele always comes to my brain when I hear this, because I think wherever he is in hell, if you believe in a hell, he's probably smiling when he hears about this, that you have this industrialized nations, whether it's Europe or here, in which apparently we're all out of problems because now we're just picking on our own in the most vulnerable. That really, you know, when you hear about like castration rituals in Africa, you know, one tribe conquers the other tribe and they start physically like mutilating the genitals of women and castrating them with a machete, we're all horrified. But if we give someone a pill and convince them that they're a boy trapped in a girl's body, all of a sudden people in like Hollywood are clapping, and now they have a new now their child is a trans child. I feel like a Twilight Zone episode. It feels like COVID again, where all of these things are happening. And I'm like, am I the only, I must be wrong because I feel like the only one saying this. But now I think we have kind of a voice, not only between what GaG's been doing, but the bull in the China shop that Trump he's almost given, and this case has lent more credence to it. And I don't know if you guys just saw that Pennsylvania University now banned all trans men swimmers and athletes from their women's programs.
And removing it from the record.
Right. So Riley Gaines was right all along. And so like now here we are. Are we giving a voice finally? Riley Gaines has been vindicated. GaG's being vindicated. Tennessee's been vindicated. And do you think that this actually like pushes far? But one of the questions I was going to ask that I had written down was, are there negative effects from this decision as well that you can see on the horizon for individual states or people? Do we see any sort of like negativity that comes out of this decision?
So really quick before I get into that, because you raised a really important point that I do want to, and that was about the rates of autism. When they're kind of pushing kids into this, there's a lot of comorbid psychological disorders that come with gender dysphoria. Autism is one of them, and it's one of the more visible ones because it's discussed a lot more. There's also things like borderline personality disorder. There's things like depression, anxiety, all of this stuff together. And when I was a lot younger, I could not find a psychiatrist who would prescribe me antidepressants when I was under 18. The day I turned 18, a psychiatrist would see me. What happened between the night that I was 17 and I woke up and I was 18? Granted, this is in 2008, so, almost a million years ago. But now you want to say that somebody couldn't have antidepressants who probably needed them. And, I don't want to debate that, but now we're going to give kids these really, hormones and puberty blockers and stopping normal bodily function
at 8.
That's
at 8 years old before they ever hit
and ignoring the signs that we do know. We know that autism, and we all, I think at this point, everybody has someone in their life that's autistic or on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
My baby brother it has autism, and with the spectrum disorder, it's I don't know how it's properly or phrased or what the term is, but we've always known it to be that we reference it as it's a package diagnosis. You get all of these things that come with it. So why are we highlighting individuals who are confused about their gender, with the same individual is also experiencing extreme depression, anxiety, and then they want to relate it to, oh, well, that's because of the gender dysphoria? No, it's the autism. Why are we ignoring the main diagnosis is here? And somebody said earlier about how these people are the future. Autism, and the reason it is a spectrum disorder is because the spectrum is so broad. These people are incredibly brilliant. They operate in a different space. And so, but in the medical field that we're in now, that used to be something that was discussed. And now it's like, you have autism, but are you suffering from trans? Oh, you are? Okay, cool. Come here. And it's to the front of the line kind of stuff. It's insane. And so these people, just like kids who are dealing with depression from being understanding that they're probably gay or bi, kids who are dealing with depression. Some of these kids aren't even gay, bi, or lesbian. They're just lost in the world that is being young. And so they're looking to grab onto something, and everything that they're experiencing is once would have been addressed, and it's not. It's just, oh, do you feel like you might? Okay, cool. Again, back to the front of the line kind of stuff. And we're ignoring just the basics of growing up, struggling with either a spectrum disorder or being gay or having an anxiety or depression disorder. All that is just being ignored.
So to answer your question, Rudy, because I just wanted to bring that up because there is that question of comorbid psychological disorders that come with gender dysphoria that aren't being treated because everybody's skipping straight to if we trans you, you're going to be fine, which is not the case. But the most I could see is certain states that are friendly to gender ideology might try and push back and do what California did and say, bring your kids here, we'll trans them here, and we'll protect you from, the big, bad, scary people that, hate trans or that are transphobic. That I could see happening. But a lot of these states are already on that road anyway. So we have 20 states right now that prohibit or severely restrict these procedures.
Yeah, and they've just been emboldened by this, recent ruling. 20 plus, right, Joey, or something?
Yeah. And so we're I probably should have gone and looked at the map so I could tell you which states they are, but you can kind of guess which states
I think we can guess.
Not California. Never.
It is definitely not California. Nowhere in the Northeast really either, unfortunately. But parents in these states need to speak up. Just because you live in Texas or Oklahoma or Missouri, don't think this stuff is not happening in your kid's classroom, because it is.
Yeah, we've gone to rural Ohio to speak at aggressive board meetings where, we're like, where the hell there's a cow over here, and then, like, where did all these radicals come from? Like, we thought this was like, this is country. This is like, where everything's supposed to be chill. No, it is. I mean, I'm telling you, some of these boards are more aggressive than you would find here in California in these little rural places in Ohio, like in Ohio. It's insane. So people aren't safe. You're not safe. It is in your backyard. Like Joey was saying, you do have to speak up. You do have to educate yourself, because at the end of all of this, just like you were saying with the Riley Gaines stuff and everything that we're advocating for, all of the parent groups that we work with, the phenomenal organizations that we work with, at the end of all of this, the parents have the right, and that is backed up by state and law. It's supported by the Constitution. It's just a matter of how loud does it have to be screamed, and how many times does it have to be won in the courts where they're finally like, okay, we get it. But there's no reason to be fearful. There's no reason to feel like, well, how can I? You can. Like, everything is on your side. It's just a matter of saying, I'm not going to give up any of my rights, especially as a parent.
For parents, we actually have a book called The Gender Trap, which you can find on Gays Against Groomers website, to kind of for parents to educate themselves, or anybody really who wants to educate themselves about these issues, about what these sorts of drugs and interventions can do to minors. It's very well written. It also talks about gender ideology and how it's infected our society.
Yeah, how to approach it. What do I do if I have a brother or a sibling or a nephew or a child? It's a really great resource for that. There's something else I was gonna say. Yeah, so the gender trap, but parents educating. I'll come back to it.
Yeah, we can always come back to stuff. Let's Joey, let's get to some of these dissents. So it was a 6-3 decision.
The dissents.
Don't get them going. Abort.
was Jackson's. She's still there. What was your favorite dissent, Joey?
So Justice Sotomayor, God bless her. Oh dear.
As we would say here in Oklahoma, oh, bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
Bless her heart. She comes back with this strange argument, and like, I almost want to see if I can find the exact quote, because she's talking something about, let's say you have a Christian child who wants to go to a church somewhere else and is going to be exposed to this other religion and this other form of worship. Would the state have go to a Jewish service, I guess was her argument, and would the state have a rational basis interest in prohibiting that? And I'm going, what are you talking about? A Christian child going to a Jewish service is not the same thing as administering a puberty blocker drug to an 8-year-old and them ending up with severe medical problems later on. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy scary that these are the people who are making rulings. Like,
this is a Harvard educated jurist who has a lifetime appointment on the highest court in our land, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah,
You know,
it's one of those, like, it's interesting that she chose that, not only because it's so idiotic, but because, like, it's literally like the First Amendment. Like, it's number one, freedom
well, and
of religion. Like, you can go and choose any religion, and other than maybe a belief in your head, you're not really harmed, I don't believe. So that's what to me was really interesting. Like, you chose the First Amendment.
the other reason that she did it too is any law that would classify based on religion immediately triggers strict scrutiny. It's one of those things that falls under a suspect class.
Sure.
So she's trying to. So what she's also trying to get into with that is saying, so Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor all would have granted quasi suspect classification to being transgender. The court did not rule on this. They did not go there. The court has not created a new suspect class, I think, in about 40 years. So basically, what we have for heightened scrutiny is sex, religion, and national origin alienage. Justice Barrett in her concurrence went there, and she said, and she lays out a fantastic argument for why transgender people do not meet the standard set forth in that famous footnote 4 in Caroline Products as to why they are not a suspect class. One of the questions that she asked repeatedly was, is there a history of legal, so statutory? She uses the word de jure, which basically means legal in statute, discrimination against transgender persons. To which both Jen Prelogar, the Solicitor General for the Biden administration, and the ACLU attorney both said no, that not to their knowledge, there is not. So that's one of the reasons it doesn't trigger heightened scrutiny. So that's what Sotomayor is doing there. But but you think you're reading this, and you're sitting there reading this, and you're trying to understand why she's going there and why you would even try to draw that. I mean, and it makes more sense as to why the majority, even if you want to boil this down ideologically, is looking at the statute as it's written. As this statute is written, it has nothing to do with being transgender, and everything to do is how old are you, and what are we using the drugs for? That's it. Period. End of discussion. That's all this statute is about, and that's where GaG kind of stays in our lane. Is what is happening? Why is it happening in front of children? How do we put a stop to it? That's what we do. If you want to really boil down to why our organization exists.
Sure. Yeah, and why do you and explain to us why you would want children there? That's like a little caveat at the end. Yeah. Why do you want them there? Because that's very strange.
That always the oh God, drag shows and drag queens, like
story hour.
That's a thing that's exists. Yeah, well, like drag queens, drag shows, all of that. That's been a thing for who knows actually how long that's been a thing. Like, I've been to drag shows, but I wasn't a kid and I didn't have a kid there. Like it can be it's pretty wild, pretty fun. Why you would want that in a library reading to kids, that is the real question. And it's the same thing here. It is funny to me, there is always that question of like, they want to transgender want to have this protected class, but it's like, okay, but what are you transing to?
And why does the protection are you the only class that solely gets protected? What about everybody else? What about the children? What about these parents? Like, and that's where you can always, where you can stand on message with them and they can't. Like, you can call them to the mat. They're not going to be able to do anything because it doesn't add up. Like, why do you need kids in front of, whether it's drag story hour or it's anything at Pride? Why are they there? And why are you screaming for this protection that you are not giving to these other people? You're just saying that this is what you want because of you're trans, whatever. These are actually children that have been gifted from God to these parents, and you want to ignore that while screaming the top of your lung in your little mob about how you need to be protected. It's wild, the hypocrisy.
It's worth mentioning too that gays and lesbians are also not a protected class. The Supreme Court never went that far. Justice Kennedy, who authored all of the major gay rights decisions of from Romer all the way through to Obergefell v. Hodges never at any point applied heightened scrutiny to gays and lesbians. He never did. He always stopped short of doing that. So why would we do the same? And that's why it comes to sex discrimination, because biological. So, and this is what's really interesting and pervasive through Chief Justice Roberts' opinion, is that if you really read it closely, he is implicitly interpreting sex to be a biological binary in how he is approaching this case.
That was my point of like, what are you transing to? Because if you were born a man and I'm going to trans, well, you're not transing to a fucking elephant. And even if you are transing to an elephant, you're going to trans to a female elephant or whatever. Like it's just, it makes me laugh because it's so absurd that, and you mentioned too, that at some point that the Supreme Court mentioned that there's no purpose. So like, there's no purpose on this thing. There's no legitimate medical purpose for this. So it's like, okay, well, if there's no legitimate medical purpose, then that almost implies that this is not necessarily not a thing, but it's an A or B. It's not the X or Y as they're trying to claim that it is, as under some sort of protected status as a trans person, which, by the way, if you can just say it and be it, that's you're really coloring outside the lines there too. But it also reminds me of why GaG came around in the first place, and it was, Gays Against Groomers. Well, what's a groomer? Well, it's basically a pedophile who's looking for a victim, right? And so much of this is just that. When you're talking about adults imposing their will on kids in a sexual manner, is that what this? I mean, yeah, there's a big dollar amount behind it from medical and pharma and things like that. That's never ending. You're going to be paying for the rest of your life. But there's another underlying current that not a lot of people talk about or want to tackle. And I think it's the sexual aspect of it.
Well, who is influencing these kids in the first place? I mean, this doesn't just come out of nowhere right. A kid does not come up to you and say, hey, I know I'm a boy, but I really think I'm going to be a girl. Okay, well, look, I don't have kids, but I've had 3 nieces and nephew and a little guy now is a great nephew. And, these kids have at some point in their lives also told me that they were superheroes and that, it's part of being a kid that, they play with different things. They play dress up. When I was a kid, I would put on my grandmother's earrings and then put on my grandpa's shoes. And there was nothing weird about that. You do it now, and it's an adult who's interpreting and projecting their beliefs onto a child, saying, oh, well, that means, have you ever thought about becoming a girl? Or, for a little girl, have you ever thought about becoming a boy? It's
not only a child, but not their child, and doing it in a secretive way. So for Gays Against Groomers, groomer for us is, we don't use it lightly. We're actually very careful with it because it's a very serious, label that has a lot of gravity to it. But what has happened is that it's expanded from, groomer, you think pedophile, but there are things that can fall under that type of behavior. We're not necessarily, like, not all these teachers are pedophiles. We're not ever saying that. These parents who are confused and they're being told they're not. But when you're grooming a child to keep secrets from their parents, that's grooming. When you're telling a child that they can be something that they can't comprehend because they don't have the frontal lobe development, they don't have the understanding, the foresight, they can't have consent. They can't be informed of something that they have no understanding about. A 7-year-old doesn't know what an orgasm is. You can explain it to them, but they'll never know that. And so, what it really feels like. So that has all fall under the grooming umbrella. That it's not, just what kind of the old school meaning was, is, oh, that's a pedophile and watch out, grab your kids, be careful. There's many types of grooming behavior where you're trying to indoctrinate a child to believe in something that is either not real, something that you want them to believe in when you have no jurisdiction over them because you're not their legal guardian, and that you want to keep secrets. This is teaching children. This is all grooming behavior because you're teaching children to do things that are dangerous, to think that it's okay to be in unsafe situations, to keep secrets from your parents. That is all grooming behavior. What your intention behind it is going to be different, depending on who we're talking about and you know what whatever orbit we're in. But the grooming is still the same. You're trying to pull a child away from something that you don't want them to be a part of for whatever your reason is, and showing them how to do that and teaching them how to do that. And it's very alarming. And you have a generation of kids who already have been affected by that. So, you know, what's horrible to think about is that when these kids do get into that situation, they've already been taught by an educator, by physicians, nurses, you know, their psychiatrists, people who they've been trained to trust. They've been taught by these people, if they fall in this, you know, victim, you know, hood of this grooming, that when something does happen, you're not going to say anything. Don't tell mom and dad, because they're not going to believe you, or they're going to, you know, they're not going to be on your side or whatever. And it's setting kids up. This is just one component of it. And it's probably the smallest one if we're talking, you know, comparing it to medical treatment and stuff and castration and all of that. But you're putting these children in a potentially terribly vulnerable situation where they've been taught to not say anything and just do what they're told. That is so alarming.
With grooming behavior, you know, some of the things you want to look at are, what is the power dynamic? It always starts very innocuously, and you want to go back to say, you know, bringing up some of these issues like autism, and maybe even some of these the things that happen in young adulthood, in adolescence. We all know about teen angst. Some of us still listen to emo music and never grew out of it. Not saying anybody specifically, but anyone who knows me was probably laughing right now. But what is when you're coming in with some of with a lot of those feelings, you're going through adolescence, you're starting to experience all these feelings and emotions, and everything is running wild. And a lot of gender ideology, a lot, you know, gay world, they come in and they love bomb. And they say, you're welcome here, you're accepted here, you can be who you are. And that feels so good to a lot of these kids, that when they do have some of these underlying psychological and developmental issues, that just feels so good that they'll go along with almost anything just to be part of something. I mean, we're all probably old enough to remember, you know, peer pressure and stranger danger and all that fun stuff. It's the same thing, except now they're telling you to amputate body parts and start, you know, shooting yourself up with drugs. Like,
and it's not stranger danger anymore. It's just like danger, because every, you know, any adult in your life that is, you know, about this indoctrination or, you know, this ideology, they're not strangers. And that brings me back to what I was saying a moment ago, that's so scary to me. If I, you know, as much as I want children, I'm glad that I don't have any right now. I do have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I'm on the front lines. But man, I'd be terrified. I'd be like, I'm going to work a night job. My kid is not going to school, homeschool, in my care at all times, because there's not stranger danger anymore. It's just danger.
Yeah, that's one of the most pervasive and like insidious things about it, is that, you know, it used to be peer pressure, and, you know, someone's going to offer you drugs and you just say no and things like that. The teacher's the one offering you the drug now, like, and they're telling you that this is the way, and that authority figure, you know, they're like, when you're, you know, 8, 9, 10 years old, a teacher is like a cop in a classroom or in a school, and you're supposed to go to them with any problem in this, that, or the other. And now you go to them with a problem, say my knee hurts, and they're like, yeah, we'll just cut it off at the thigh, you'll be fine. You know, it's like, well, wait, what? Like, it's that to me is like you were saying, Samuel, like that's the scariest part about all of this, is like, you know, if you're a parent today, you're basically turning your child over to, well, God knows what you're turning your child over to for 8 hours a day, and you're required by law to do that, and they have to go. And it's like, well, you know, and I know that there was the whole, and it's still probably a movement out there of, well, just, you know, if you can afford to, put your kids in private school. Well, where do you think that the teachers in private school were educated? At the same place that Sotomayor was educated, that dingbat? Like, I mean, you know, you start seeing these same lines of thinking. It's like the higher that you go in the institution, the more insane and, like, for lack of a better term, retarded they get. Like, it's insane to me that you can have like a country boy who went to high school, who's 45, 50 years old. He's more wise, educated, knows more than a teacher who has 20 years on the job and went to like the University of Tulsa. Like, they don't know anything, but they know what they've been told. It's the craziest thing.
Well, and then everybody can't homeschool either, or private school. Like, and, you know, and we get that a lot with parents, and our, you know, rebuttal to them or response to them asking, well, what can I do? Again, parents don't understand that they have really a lot of rights, even in school, to request documents, to request what's happening that week. Those are all backed up by law. That they have to be given this stuff, and also to teach your children to be vigilant. It's no longer, hey, when you see that creepy van down the alley, go back to the main street where there are people. Now it's when you're in the classroom and something is being said that you know that mom or dad don't like, or that we don't align with, even if it has to do with religion or something. You know, these parents lend this is the idea that parents have to understand. They lend their children over for the day to be educated. They are not giving up rights. They are not handing over power. They are lending to the care of, for those, and the care is dictated by the parents, because you're going to treat my child and you're going to conduct yourself around my child and address my child the way that I see fit, or me or you are going to have a problem. And that's really kind of the position parents need to have, because they do possess all of that. Everything is with them. But what we've been taught by the school board, who we've been to them, we see how they shut these parents down, and they have their legal team there. It's very intimidating. But when it comes to your child, I mean, I could stand against, even just with my niece and nephew, I would face the world, and I'm not giving up 1 inch. I'm standing my ground. And these parents need to remember who they are and what they're doing this for. And that's for their children, and nobody else has any right to their child but them. And then real quick, for the people who are like, we get this too a lot. Well, what about the one kid who, you know, their parents aren't good for them, and you guys are saying parents have all the rights and parents know everything? There are those kids that unfortunately are in homes or in situations where they're not being looked after, or maybe something is happening. What about them? I'll tell you what about them. People like teachers are mandated reporters. So if they truly believe that a child is being abused because he's gay or lesbian or trans, or he's being neglected or she's being neglected in any fashion, they have an obligation by law to report that to who? The proper authority for the proper investigation. The janitor at a school, the art teacher, the math teacher does not get to determine whether or not a parent is in violation of anything with that child's right, has committed any abuse, and therefore the child should be kept from the parent, or secrets should be kept. These people do not have the credentials for that. There are entities that are trained. That's what they do, and that's why these the faculty are instructed, and they have training on how to be mandated reporters, so that anything that needs to go to the proper agency, government or otherwise, will go there, and a proper investigation will be issued. It is not the teacher. They do not have the credentials. Sorry, you got your double masters in mathematics. Cool, great, do you? But you don't have the credentials to tell me whether or not my child and I have an unfit relationship, unhealthy or abusive. You can report it, but you can't tell me that that's what it is.
That's for proper authority, and that's for a court to decide. Well, at the end of the day.
Yeah. To that point of, you know, it's like the lulberts on the interwebs that talk about, well, just homeschool your kids. Yeah, that's not the situation that most people exist in. And then also, I lost my train of thought, but
I'm sorry, I can be long-winded. I feel like sometimes I do that to people, and they're like, "What?"
No, it's good stuff. It is really good. It's good stuff. I just wanted to also point out, I think we probably should make the point that, well, I guess I can't speak for you guys, but like, I'm not necessarily like anti-trans. It's just the kids. We're pro-kid. We don't want kids harmed.
We're definitely not anti-trans. There are transgender and detransitioning members of the organization who, and even our transgender members, they want parents to understand, because some of them were transitioned too young, that there are very, very real consequences to making this decision too early.
Yeah, and trans and detrans, wherever they are in their journey or what the decision that they've made, and it's finite. We work with them. They're a huge part of the success that we've had. We've worked with them in Washington. So yeah, same for us. We're not anti-trans. We want children to be children. We want the same caution of not letting your child get behind the wheel at 12 years old and drive you down the street, to be taken when you're talking about giving them medications that they may not recover from, handling a firearm, drinking alcohol, shooting up heroin. If you're going to do these things, whether they're illegal or not, you need to be of age to do that. That's all we're asking when it comes to children, safeguarding children because of their innocence. I personally don't even believe with the legal age of 18 with some things. I don't think people should be doing a lot of things at 18. I don't feel like I understood life until I was about 27, so yeah, totally not against trans. And that's something that gets thrown at us. It's a red herring. It gets a little redundant and kind of annoying, but unfortunately it does stick for people who don't understand what we do. And the other thing would be we talked about drag queens. Love them. Joey and a bunch of our buddies just went a couple months ago to an amazing drag show. I've never been to one that was that great. It was phenomenal.
That was a lot of fun.
Dude, it was wild. These dudes, how they do this stuff, I don't know. It was amazing. Not appropriate for children. That's all we're saying.
None of it was appropriate for kids. I mean, we had drag queens that were coming to our table, and getting a little handsy and making, some inappropriate jokes, but everyone's IDs were checked at the door. You had to be 18 to be inside of the venue. They also had
it's fun. It's adult entertainment, and that's fine. We're here for it. We go to it ourselves. We indulge. But if there were children there, or if this was a business that allowed children, we wouldn't have gone, and we would have protested or we would have sent them, a notice. Luckily, this location is pretty legit. And so we're all for drag shows too. Love them, but not for children. Sorry, it's just not okay.
Yeah,
actually, not sorry. We don't make apologies.
I always look at it. Right. Absolutely. Sorry, not sorry. But yeah, I look at it like, it's like a strip club, like a gentleman's club. Like every one of those girls pretty much has a kid. None of them are there. You don't need to come see where mommy works. It's not take your daughter to work day.
Yeah. Well, I would certainly hope not, especially in that case.
Well, and we've had parents too, where we've been in these, whether it's been
right
in a group discussion, it's been the kind of the, gag on the street kind of thing at these at pride shows or pride events where we're talking to people. And the moment you say this, especially to females, when you're like, well, how would you feel if Crystal, from the Gentleman's Club showed up to read a book to your child, and your husband and all the other husbands are there, and her breasts are hanging out. She's got a little skimpy bikini on. Her nails are done, her 6-inch heels, and she looks like she's about ready to slide down a pole, split them legs, and do her number to get that money. You wouldn't be okay with it. You would be pulling your husband and your child right away, how inappropriate it is. But somehow when it's men who, I'm going to say this too, this is all tea and all shade. A lot of these drag queens don't even, they're so clockable. Like, they just look bad. Like, they look terrible. They're not even doing drag right. They got crunchy wigs, old stilettos. Like, it's just bad. Like, I would pause for just a moment if they would try to get it together, but it's not even, it's just so creepy is what my point is going to be. It's like, it's not only inappropriate, but they look creepy. They're men with beard. It's like, it's creepy.
It's like some sort of weird circus sideshow.
Yeah, I would have had nightmares. Yeah. Like I watched certain movies when I was a kid, and they weren't even scary in that kind of stuff. Any stuffed animal moving in a movie would have given me nightmares. If I would have seen something like that, like, God, man, it's creepy. And it's creepy that they want to do it too. Let's hang on that for a second too. It's so creepy that they want to do it so much that they're going to argue with parents, and they're going to show up or a protest and have like, what is your mission, bro? Like, it's super sus.
Why are you so desperate to be in front of children?
Yeah,
and I know we're kind of really a field of Skrmetti because it didn't tackle any of this, but this is the stuff that's out there. We've seen it. We've seen protests get really hot in front of libraries about Drag Queen Story Hour. And then so you look at some of these books that some of them are reading. There was one, I think it's like Grandpa's Pride or something. It's got bondage and BDSM gear in it. Like, why does that need to be in front of kids? Like, why?
Yeah,
That it's not. It's just not appropriate. And the fact that you want to be
Dude,
there
the
as
fact that
though you're,
going so hard, you're going
yeah,
so hard on Earth to make this happen. Like, I mean, lock it up, lock him up. Like, it's just weird. There's no reason for it.
I'll tell you what the issue is. Probably more than people even realize what their issue with things are is it's one and the same, whether it's a trans person, a loud trans person, or it's the drag queen wanting to read in front of kids at a library. It's the force fed, you have to accept me, you have to do all the things, like I don't really care about most people, if I'm just being honest. Like, I don't care what your thing in life is. Like, it doesn't matter to me that Joey is a gay man or that so and so is whatever. Like, it just, okay, it might matter to Joey, but it doesn't matter to me. I don't give a shit. So good for you, great, whatever. But with the whole trans thing, I feel it feels like, it's not even feels like, it's true, of like, so many of them just want to tell you, like, I am trans and you have to do X, and it's like, I'm an American, I have to do jack and shit. I have to pay my taxes and, like, some other things so I don't get arrested. But, like,
Yeah,
dude,
it's
just
like
just go about your life, leave the kids alone, and just do your thing.
100, man. That I'm so with that, Bat. It's like everybody wants to know, like, where are they now? Like, where's the Baruch assault now? It's all these trans people, or these that are so aggressive. The extremists, the drag queens that want to do Kid Story Hour. It's, I want to do it my way. I want it now. And it's bizarre. It's like, yeah, you're not sure. We're all special in our own way. And again, what you believe in, your creator or whatever. But outside of that, and the people that care about you, like, nobody cares. Nobody cares what Samuel in California is doing. Like, other than my little circle, people don't know me and they don't care. And even if they did get to know me, by the way, I didn't know Joey was gay. That was news to me. But nobody knows me like that. And even when they do, they don't care. Nobody cares what you're doing. And they only start to care when you start to tell them and tell them things that they don't want to know or that they didn't want to care about. And then you extend that to their children. That's the only problem. I mean, and that's another area where Gays Against Groomers has been really fighting from the inside and pushing back, is that for so long now, we've been able to just kick it and do us. Nobody cares what we're doing. Now, all of a sudden, because of this, radical ideology that has hijacked our community and has been under the guise of this, that, and the other, now people are like, oh, well, you're gay, so you're a part of all this, right? Yeah, you think it's okay to have drag queen. You think it's all right to, no, actually, I don't. And so we right now, other than when I was a teenager, I can sincerely say with full honesty that right now is probably, or is the most cautious that I've ever been about being gay, because of how bad it's gotten, and because you're messing with the most precious, important thing in life, and that's children and people's children. And people can't separate the two. They just assume because they see LGBT, blah, 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 and then, or they see this, morphed, creepy pride flag, and they just assume that, well, they must be with that. And it could be, one of the takeaways I hope tonight is that, listeners know that we are not. There are most of the gay community are silent because they're scared, because you see what happens when you speak out against these radicals. And then there's the other ones who are like us that are, gets a little scary, but we got to speak on it. But most of the gay community are just your gay, lesbian, bi, and we're just doing life just like everybody else. And unfortunately, we've been thrust, into this, not by our own doing. And now we're actually trying to undo it, because we realize if we don't, nobody's going to, and we may not even have the rights that we have at some point, because people are going to be pushing, for something. I know that's a little wild to say, but it does cross my mind in a way it never has until this last couple of years.
We're in what we like to call a forced marriage with the TQ plus,
Arranged.
This ideology that is inherently political. It's divisive. It's a wedge issue in families. And when you start coming at kids and causing friction between such an important and sacred relationship as between a parent and a child, that is where we said that we cannot allow this to happen in our name. Not only is it, I mean, there's just certain things, and this is not popular to say in the modern world, there are certain things that are wrong, period.
Yeah.
This is one of them. Disrupting children's, relationships to their families, bringing these things into their lives, this sexualization, this idea that they need these drugs and these procedures to feel loved and to be part of something. It's horrible. I recently made the best bad decision of my life to go to law school. A lot of the reason I did that is because of what's going on now, and because somebody needs to be there to really advocate for children, for victims of other, of some of this stuff, and for what's going to come down the line. Because where the ideology looks like it's popular and it looks like it's winning, it's not winning. it is not winning. Even in gay world, like Sam said, there's so many people who just we're so afraid of losing what they have in their social lives that they don't want to speak up. But behind the scenes, they'll tell us that they're with us, and they know
people
that what we're doing is right.
That are doing this, and parents who are fighting too can they can share in this, is that we've lost friends. Some of us lost family members. Some of us have worried that our jobs were compromised because we're seen as the radical right. We're just a bunch of right wingers that are pretending to be gay. Like we're not really gay. And it's just so, that was quick, swift, and heavy when we started doing this, the pushback that we got from some of the people in our own community, but they were the radical ones. And then we were like, wow, this is wild. And then over time, we started to hear the silent voice, like, hey, I really support what you guys are doing, but I could never, I'll lose my job, or my friends will think I'm bad, blah, blah, blah. And it's real. It's scary, but it has to be done. And,
one of the things I think for everyone who might be new to this issue, to Gays Against Groomers, of the organization, to everything, to the straight community, broadly speaking, to those who do have parents who do have children, like your best ally in this whole fight against the transing of the kids and this whole butchery is the gay community. Like the gay community is not on that side by and large. Somehow it was so much of this happened so quickly and just like seemingly overnight that so many organizations, groups of people got swept up in the whole thing. And now you're starting to see this like bifurcation of different groups, which is a great thing. Of like the trans, like the radical trans folks are on their own at this point. Like everyone has cut ties with them, pardon the pun. But even like I can't remember her name, the Harry Potter lady,
J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling is not a right winger by any stretch of the imagination, but she also is not on board with this trans stuff either when it comes to transing the kids. And she's taken the hardest of hard lines while staying a, progressive or liberal or left leaning, however she describes herself. But, that to me was one of those, like, this was one of those lines in the sand of this person who probably has a lot to lose, but also has a lot in the bank, but was just like, yeah, no, we're not doing this. And yeah, I am still very liberal and I still believe in these other things, but this whole thing, no. And that was like an inflection point, I think, for a lot of people too. But to see these lines being drawn, I think people really need to realize, the normies of the world, that the gay community, we're all on the same side. This is how you crack this thing. This is how this thing like stops, is when you ally. I sounded European all of a sudden. You ally with people who seemingly on paper, you're not supposed to be on the same side. You can be a right-wing, Bible-thumping, clinging to your guns, whatever stereotype, hanging out with Ted Nugent on the weekends. And you can have gay friends and they can do the same things you do and hang out in the same way and all of those. And you can all agree that to leave the damn kids alone. Like that's where you can line up. Or it can be, you can have gay friends that you know that you're completely opposite of when it comes to like maybe political leanings. Maybe you have a gay friend who's pro-Trump and you were pro-Kamala or vice versa or whatever. I think we can all agree that leave the damn kids alone. We're not going to be butchering kids in the name of affirmation, and we're certainly not going to be butchering autistic kids in the name of affirmation or rendering them, barren or unable to have any sort of sexual pleasure. Or you're just going to ruin their life at age 10, because of some movement that we're not really even sure where it came from, why it's happening, or who all is benefiting from it. But this like child sacrifice. I mean, how far back does this go in human history of child sacrifice and human sacrifice? It's just like the modern day version of it. You make all these inroads with abortion, whatever someone might believe about abortion, but now we're finding this other way to like create this kind of child sacrifice. I won't go much deeper into all that whole thing, but I mean, it aligns with itself.
No, that's such a great remark to make, and it's so important. And we've actually had to have these conversations. First off, I'll say within Gays Against Groomers, we have very liberal people, very conservative members, Jewish, Christian, so we're diverse in ourselves, but our common ground is safeguarding the children. And when we work with other organizations, that's exactly what our message has been to them, that normally we wouldn't rock with each other, right? You're, Christian organization, you don't want to associate with us, cool. But it's not about us. And there should be no space between us and any other organization at any rally or any event or any summit. No space between us when it comes to safeguarding children. We can put all of our stuff aside, our beliefs aside, conversations aside as adults, and leave it there. I don't even want to revisit it. Let's just stay on brand with safeguarding children. We can work hand in hand, close ranks in that, and without issue. And for the most part, I think, with the exception of a couple organizations, that were just really extreme, and they couldn't lock in with the whole, like, I can work with gay people, not be gay. Man, it's been incredible. And the success of that has been measurable. And so, yeah, anybody who, is feeling that way or thinks that, or even talks to people who, may be in that camp, it's not about us, not at all. It's about these children and protecting them.
And I had the honor of being part of Gays Against Groomers delegation to Washington, D.C. About this time last year for an event called the March for Kids. And you want to talk about like this broad coalition of people that like normally should not get along. It was like Moms for America, Moms for Liberty. And then here's like Sam, like 15 of us from Gays Against Groomers that are sitting in the front. We had like these matching shirts on. So, it had our logo and everything. And people are coming up to us and saying, we love you guys. Like, we love the work you do. We follow you on social media. Somebody was staying in our hotel, actually, and Samuel and I were having breakfast and came up and just sat and chatted with us and let us know that
these are like Christian organizations
together.
And then
deeply conservative organizations.
Yeah, just getting well, not that they're, but like, Tulsi Gabbard, Glenn Beck, all of that stuff doesn't matter. There was that one crazy lady, but
we don't get into that.
Yeah, but it goes to show you
there's one at every party.
Exactly. I was gonna say that there's always that one organization or that one group. Doesn't matter. Everybody else together, and that summit was. Our march was so impactful. We gained so much from that. People gained so much from us. It's so important because we can't do this alone, and neither can other organizations. We all need to be in this together. And all the politics or the religious beliefs. Again, put that aside. We didn't ever have to come back to that, because once this is over, we all go back, to doing what we're doing and living our separate lives. But the mission right now is safeguarding. Yeah, safeguarding the children.
Right. Yeah. And I think we're making some progress there.
For sure.
Joey, you got anything left you want to say about the Skrmetti? We're
We kind of went a little bit afield, but I think we got in. We discussed a good bit of it. Basically, what I want people to understand is that the court did not make this radical anti-transgender decision. The court said fundamentally that the state has a vested interest in protecting minors from experimental medical procedures, is what the court said. I am boiling it down, basically to only the facts here to kind of cut through some of the legalese, but that's what the court said. The court has emboldened other states who have not acted yet to pass these laws. If you live somewhere where you aren't sure if children are protected from these types of medical procedures, state and local politics are your best friend, because those are the people that you're ultimately going to make the most important or make the most strides. Call your state representatives. You can Google who your state senator is, your state assemblyman, however you describe it, in your own jurisdiction. I am going to be moving to North Carolina soon. I will be getting in touch with my representatives there to try to make sure that we can, get some of this work done in North Carolina as well. Because it's going to take parents, it's going to take, other gays and lesbians and even transgender people and who aren't on board with pushing this on kids. It's going to take all of us to stand up together and say, this is the hill we're going to die on. This is the line in the sand that we're drawing, and we will not allow this sort of experimentation to happen on America's children.
And it's not all overwhelming either. There's so many resources out there. Our website, you can find so much guiding you through how to contact, this state representative, that roadmaps to a lot of stuff, the information, the data to support you, even if it's just in an argument with the or a discussion with your family on the data on this stuff. That's all there. So don't see it as like this, oh man, how would I ever get started? There's so many great resources, starting with with our website, and from there, others as well. So yeah, definitely look that up. There's so much there. GaG has done a great job at putting a template out there for all these resources.
You can go to our website to contact Gays Against Groomers if you're aware of something going on in your jurisdiction that you might want our help. You can go to our website. We have a contact form. You can follow us on social media. Our national account is @Against Groomers on X. We're on Instagram. I don't use Facebook. Sam, are we on Facebook? Yeah, we don't know. We don't use Facebook. So but we are on Instagram. We're on X. You can follow us on X at GaG California, specifically for where Samuel and I currently operate. You can follow us there. And you can,
and it also helps break down some of these things that come up. We're posting all the time. Our team is amazing with that and breaking this down. We have our legislative department. So just even if you just need the skinny on what happened, what was passed, and why, and how does that affect parental rights, and how does it maybe impact children, but it's all there. So even just following some of these sites, you feel so up to speed, in the most edited way, but it's there.
Yeah. And I will this is streaming live, but I'm going to repost this and put it up, and I'll put all of those links down there so you guys will have them. Just look in the description, I will end up posting this on YouTube, and of course Rumble is already there, but I'll put all those links in there. I'll put my email address in there too, just if somebody has a weird question about something and wants to contact direct instead of doing maybe a form or something like that. Maybe keep it a little more hidden. I don't know. People are weird when it comes to the internet. So contact us any way you want. If you know something, want to say something, resources, whatever it is. But I'll put all that in the descriptions. But gentlemen, it's been fun. I appreciate you guys hanging out. I really appreciate this conversation. Both of you are welcome. If you have something you want to talk about in the future, maybe we can make this a more like once a month, once every 2 months, something like that. Or if GaG's just got something that you guys want to promote, I have dozens of listeners and followers that will be happy to at least know about it, and we can go from there. So gentlemen, thank you. Have a happy 4th of July. And to all of the viewers, listeners, don't blow your fingers off, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Happy folks.
Thank you,
Take
Rudy.
care.
You're welcome, guys.